And welcome to a truly special edition of Ben's Junk. Special because in this video, you get to see everything. Because it has underscan capability. So I think I've teased this long enough. I think it's finally time to discuss it. I feel like I've lived with it long enough to have something of a handle on it, even though I haven't been able to test everything. I've done a lot of the everyday stuff with it, and I'm really liking it. And so, yeah, here we go. Granted, this is a bit like trying to review a set of speakers and just going, oh, doesn't that sound so great? But you can't really communicate it to the audience. So this is going to be more about specs than anything else. So anyway, before I get any deeper into this, this is the Sony PVM-1343MD. It's from 1992, and those last two letters, the MD, are no accident. This particular model was meant for doctors' offices, and I'm sure this showed a lot of ultrasounds back in the 90s. I'll get to the significance of this particular model for me in a moment here. But before I do that, I definitely need to give a shout out, a big one, to Steve over at the Retro Tech channel here on YouTube. And it is kind of a generic channel name, but his whole thing is, especially PVMs, his whole thing is CRT monitors. And he's been working with me and being patient with me for several months now. Granted, this has all been over for a while, but during that main period there, yeah, helping me through this, figuring out specs and all that. So as for this particular monitor, the significance is I wanted one of these PVMs with EIAJ8 capability for the old open reel video stuff that I have. But at the same time, I would like S-video. So that's a good distance in time period. But there was that period with these monitors where the two were coexisting. And according to Steve, at least, this is the last model where you had both of those. So in addition to the EIAJ8 and the S-video, we have, of course, composite, 2 inputs and outputs, BNC, but you can, of course, just pop an adapter on there. And this does have RGB on it, analog RGB for like a Betacam deck, digital RGB, so you could use this in lieu of a more traditional computer model for a period computer. And it's, of course, being a professional monitor, it's got everything out in the open, you know, so you can fine-tune levels and horizontal hold and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, I've got the calibar hooked up at the moment just for some quick and easy patterns here. The contact is dirty on this, so the picture may drop out a bit. Yep, just like that. But I guess I'll turn off the studio lighting here. Try and hopefully get the color reproduction accurate as much as my camera will allow. And of course the light level will vary because I do have this allowed to do some gain. But yeah, we'll just kind of bounce around as I talk. But I'm really impressed with how good a job he did on this. Let's see if we can get to one of the more difficult patterns, things where you would see warping on the outer edges of the screen and that sort of stuff, or stuff moving on you, you know, like a grid pattern like this where it would be kind of bending out in certain spots if the tube wasn't good. I know there's a dot one in here. There it is. No dot crawl going on. I could center this a little more, I guess, if I wanted to. But yeah, as it stands, I don't really want to play with it too much until I'm confident enough to know I can get it back. So let me get back to the main familiar pattern there. So anyway, as I've mentioned, it's reached a point where I just wanted something a little more sophisticated than like one of my old consumer CRTs. There are so many times where I wish I could have, I mentioned underscan. Well, if I'm doing a film scan for archive, it would be nice to have that underscan so I can more properly frame it and have a better gauge of what I'm going to be up against in post-production. And say I'm discussing macrovision, it would be nice to throw the sync off so I could point out if it's macrovision, the little dots that fade in and out here. Certain filtering would be nice. So yeah, this hits all the targets. So anyway, I guess we'll take a cut here. We'll take a quick look at the back. I'm sure I'm just going to have to splice in a lot of photos. But we'll take a quick look at the back and we'll start doing more spec-driven stuff. This is one other thing you can do with this is you can output PAL and seacam, other video standards aside from just our North American NTSC. And so that's what this is going to be about. All right, let's just do a quick rundown here. So we got two composite inputs. Everything when possible is BNC, but of course if you want to do the more common phono-styled, RCA phono-styled composite video, you just need to pop an adapter on there. And input, output, input, output. This only does mono audio, which is fine, and there are stereo PVMs, I should note, but it just wasn't something that was important to me. If I need stereo audio, I can get it other ways. Of course, if I want stereo audio, I'm more concerned about that going to whatever I'm transferring to. But yeah, we got that. We got S-Video with corresponding mono audio. We've got EIAJ8, we've got analog RGB in and output. We can run to an external sync, a clock, and we've got digital RGB to use in lieu of a computer monitor, use this instead. And we got our controls for horizontal centering and the vertical hold, and we can also pump up the color temperature, pump up the output a bit if we wanted to. So that's all that's practical to talk about in the back right now. But yeah, there's no shortage of options here. Okay, let's start with the whole macrovision thing. And on a totally tangential note, if I need something to stabilize the video, quick and easy, even though I do own gear that will stabilize, I do have one of these RX2. I think SEMA made these. It just runs on a 9-volt battery, but just for something quick and easy that I could say use in tandem with this. Now this is about as major a movie as you're ever going to see on archive, but I intentionally have the sync kind of whack because I wanted to show off the macrovision, so you'll see the white fade in and out of the picture so I can kind of analyze the video. Now I have a VHS tape, this is DVD, a VHS tape going at the same time here, and it also has macrovision. And one of my sacrificial tapes that may spaz a bit because it's been chewed on by several VCRs now. Whatever, I've got a whole bag of major studio hi-fi stereo stuff. But anyway, sometimes you can pick out little production notes for the people who are working on this stuff in that area. So, and I could also play around with the horizontal hold and kind of pick that stuff out. So it definitely has its use as far as I'm concerned. So anyway, yeah, that covers the macrovision end of things, the most obvious thing I could think of with throwing things out of sync. So let me get my multi-system VCR going here, and I'll show you how it handles PAL and how it handles different standards in general. Okay, this is like the last test, going to be kind of a hard one to show off, but I'll do my best here. So I've got the multi-system VCR hooked up, my Iowa, which I did an episode on at one point. And I've got my PAL issue of Michael J. Fox in The Secret of My Success from 1987. This is an Australian copy. But I want you to keep your eye on the light here in the left part of the panel, I guess you could say. And I think I'll turn off the studio lighting. Hopefully that'll make it pop a little more. But you will see the light jump to the top for PAL mode. So we can actually output in other formats aside from our, here in North America, our standard NTSC. So unfortunately, this VCR, if you've seen that episode, doesn't work 100%. Some of the front panel buttons are kind of fried, so I can't kick back to NTSC, but I can jump around to everything else. So let's get this going. So I have this set to do everything automatically. So it will notice it's a PAL tape, but this will continue to play as NTSC. So hopefully the dot's a little more apparent once I start playing with it, but it'll be steady for now. And of course it's a tape, so it has to load. Always takes about 10 seconds or so. And then I'll have to fast forward so we have some kind of visual on screen. There we go. Okay. Well, the TV just kicked straight into PAL, so don't mind me. Apparently the settings on the VCR had its own idea. But it will flicker a bit on the camcorder. It is not flickering in person. Of course, you're also dealing with the different frame rates now too, so it's going to react differently. Now, according to the VCR, it's still outputting in NTSC, but I know that's not true. So that's me kind of forcing it with PAL. seacam, which is the same, but you should see the light kick back and forth. PAL, seacam, PAL. So, yeah, just wanted to show that off briefly. Let's see if I can force it back to, yeah, there we go. So it is interpreting it as PAL, but yeah. So just one more nice thing that it can do that can help me out periodically.
Maintenance, we need you in control room A. I've got a problem with the color bars on the monitor.
I've got the calibar going again just for something to look at the moment. So, bear with me, this is going to be a bit of a ramble, but aren't I always doing that? So anyway, when Steve was working on this monitor for me, he did a video that was dual purpose. One, to show me how this was coming along, but also to, a little later, release publicly discussing this little guy on top of the unit. And it's a Sony TU-1041U, TU standing for tuner unit, because these things didn't have tuners built in. And Steve's whole thing in his video was, it's mostly the retro gamers that like these monitors these days. And his whole thing was hooking up a truly vintage console, like an Atari, to this. And I'm thinking, okay, well, that's cute, but couldn't I just use an RF modulator? But nonetheless, he did show that off, and just for the hell of it, I figured, well, I'll see what one of these things runs, and I'd have more use for the tuner because I do have the little micro broadcasty thing going on sometimes. So I went online, dug around. There were plenty on Fleabay, but I wound up getting one from a broadcast surplus place just because it was guaranteed. And even that was $20. I still need the remote for this, and I'm sure the remote will cost just as much as the unit. But got it. And when Steve did put out that video publicly, overnight, these things went up to $125. But I think they're starting to level off again, and hopefully they get down to a more affordable level, because I don't see where most folks would want one of these in tandem with this, because this is more of a curiosity at this point. But anyway, as I mentioned, the Sony TU-1041U, it is just a tuner, and I guess as far as toys go, you can do the whole cable TV thing. It does handle second audio. You should see the light changing color there. So descriptive audio, that sort of thing. Spanish audio, of course, this is all pointless now in the digital era, but it was there. And the manual, the copyright date on the manual is from 1997, so this is actually from pretty late in the game. Otherwise, you can punch in whatever channel you want, channel up and down, and that's about it. I'll take some pictures around the unit, but on the side, we've got a spot for, I think, one of Sony's proprietary power deals. On the back, you can use a detachable power cord. One came with this, and I'm sure it came with it when it was new, and that's what I'm using. And you could use one of Sony's rechargeable batteries in here. There is a slot for it, but at this point, I'd imagine those batteries are pretty well shot. So otherwise, the hookup is an RF modulator. You got a coax input and composite output, in this case with stereo audio. This TV only does mono, but by 97, there would have certainly been a lot more stereo PVMs kicking around. So anyway, since I got the station going, I suppose I should actually broadcast something. So the movie du jour is Snow White from 1957, I believe, the German version, albeit dubbed in English here. And the picture is just not very good reception-wise at the moment. I'll turn off the studio light just for the hell of it. Maybe stabilize the color a little. But, So I guess as a bit of deference to the retro gamer community, to finish up this episode, I will do a couple of little video games here, video game things, just for the hell of it. I'll hook up my Atari to this using the unit here, tuner unit, as a middleman. And since this mostly appeals to fans of the 16-bit era, I guess I'll hook up... I do have a Super Nintendo, but I'll hook up my Genesis to this. I'm just more comfortable with the Genesis. So, we'll take a cut and we'll do that. Okay, I dug out my Atari for this, and the same one I've had since grade school. And I guess I'm going to have to start looking for parts for it. I only seem to have one working joystick anymore. And it was Silent Movie Day last week, so I thought maybe I'd do a bit of an epilogue to that episode with Keystone Capers, the only video game that I'm aware of to be based on the Keystone Cops. But something done went wrong with this cartridge. It has worked in the past, but it's just dead. I'm not getting anything out of it except a pattern now. So I grabbed a much more common game, Space Invaders. And we'll just we'll watch Benny Boy fail for a moment here. Give us a little volume. And how's the underscan going to look on that? Ooh, nice and tiny. All right, the light level will fluctuate because I've got the gain level just allowed to do whatever it wants here, so it will be a little weird. What else would you expect? Or we could go truly old school, I guess, and do black and white. But yeah, let's fail at Space Invaders for a bit here. Of course, I really should have brought out Pong. That's truly my game. It's certainly about my skill level. But yeah, I think you get the idea. The picture is nice and clean as you could hope for with something like this. So I guess I'll just... I get killed even when I'm hiding behind the rock. Oh well. Alright, so we'll end this one on a truly period-appropriate note with something from the 16-bit era, and we'll call it a day, and I promise I'll only subject you to a precious few seconds of my crappy playing. Alright, as promised, let's close things out with a nod to the 16-bit era and the whole reason that people are getting these monitors anymore. And I've dug out my Sega Genesis here. We've got as close to a strength as I have with it, Sonic 2, which once upon a time was the pack-in title. This even has the not for resale thing on it. I'll keep the volume low here just because I think the soundtrack is in the Content ID system. But let's just fire it up and we'll watch Benny Boy flounder. Now, I used to be pretty decent at this game. I never quite beat it, but I got close. And, you know, I'm going to leave the underscan on. I've tried this once, and it has kind of a cool blue border that you're not supposed to see. Not that there's anything, you know, weird about it, but yeah. Oh, and I'm just winning right out of the gate. Of course, once upon a time, I could play the first several levels of this just by rote. So anyway, as for people getting these monitors for gaming purposes, I guess I can kind of see it because the picture is really nice and crisp on these things. But at the same time, I don't see why a decent old consumer CRT would do you any worse. I mean, the whole reason I got this was for the more professional stuff. I wanted to have underscan capability and stuff, and truly multiple inputs, something with a VTR-8 port on it, and oh, this is just exciting for you to watch, I'm sure. Once upon a time, I could always break 100 rings on this, but I don't think that's going to happen. I'll go backwards through the spinny thing just to kind of force it. And just waste my time and waste yours. And so I guess I'm just going to play this for a little while because I can. I won't subject you to it. That's not what you're here for, I'm sure. So I'm going to call it a day here. That's it for this Ben's Junk. I'll talk to you again soon. And I can't get Sonic to stop and dance around. Oh, well. Yeah. I'm a little past it.